everybody, it's Larry, and today I'm gonna play Moral Machine. Moral Machine is not really a game in so much as it is a sort of survey where you're presented with ethical dilemmas and you have to make choices. The examples for this game, there is a self-driving car and it encounters various scenarios in which it will have to make a decision about what to do. And in most of these scenarios, I'm given to believe somebody dies. So, without further ado, let's get into some dilemmas. So, here's our first scenario. What should the self-driving car do? In this scenario, it's going to either hit 5 people or it's gonna hit 5 people. So in both of these, the number of casualties is exactly the same, and you see 2 of them are carrying briefcases with plus signs, so I guess that means they're doctors. So there's 2 doctors on the left and 2 doctors on the right. Well, gee, and another thing is each of these, you can get additional information about the scenario. So on this side, 2 male doctors, 1 elderly man, 1 male athlete, 1 male executive, and on the other side, 2 female doctors, 1 elderly woman, 1 female athlete, 1 female executive. So these are all men, and these are all women, I guess is the distinction that they're making. So in this case, the self-driving car with sudden brake failure will continue ahead and drive through a pedestrian crossing ahead. This will result in all those dead folks on either side. So I guess the question here is, which is better? Inaction that leads to the death of 5 people or action that leads to the death of 5 people? It's sort of like one of the permutations of the trolley problem. But I guess the setup here is either gender more valuable than the other, and or is one gender deserving of protection over the other, which is a terrible question in my opinion. But I mean, they're exactly equal. 2 doctors, 1 elderly person, 1 athlete, and 1 executive. They're exactly equal as far as all that stuff. I have to say in this situation, I would prefer to take a lack of action rather than choosing, because here, this one on the right, you have decided that those people deserve to die, versus just the car allowing what's gonna happen to happen on the left side. So, I'm gonna pick that one. Oh, I feel bad. Most of these are no-win situations where something terrible happens no matter what you pick. And that's the framework to consider for this. No matter what, in most of these scenarios, it's a shitty choice. But I wanted to go through a bunch of them and see just the different kinds of scenarios it can put you in. So here's the next one. In this case, the self-driving car with sudden brake failure will continue ahead and drive through a pedestrian crossing ahead. This will result in 1 dead dog and 2 dead cats. And on the other side, there is 1 criminal, 1 male executive, and 1 girl. Now, and the criminal, he's got a little bag of money, so I guess he's robbed someone. Personally, I don't think theft is a crime worthy of, execution, but I'm going to endeavor in these scenarios to be as honest as I possibly can, at the risk probably of my own reputation, because these are hard questions to answer. But if it's choice between cats and there's a little girl, and I mean, judging by the height difference, this is like an 8-year-old girl, and in real life, if I had to choose between saving some cats or saving an actual little girl, I would pick saving the little girl. So in this one, I would choose, oh, poor puppy, poor kitties. But I gotta save the little girl. And whether or not somebody is a criminal, to me, is irrelevant in questions of, what is the worth of life? Because even if you've committed a crime, that doesn't automatically mean you deserve the death penalty. So that's just something I want to get out there right away. But okay, so in this scenario, the dead will be, on the left here, it's 3 elderly men and 2 elderly women, and on the right, it's 2 men, 2 women, and 1 boy. Now, this is another one where it's the same number of people, and the critical question here is, do you save the elderly people, or do you save the young people? And, I hate to be the one to say it, but I have such a soft spot for kids in general. I have a huge soft spot for children. And I grew up in a big family, and I had to take care of younger brothers and sisters for a long time. And so the idea of, like, I know what I would do if a child was in danger. I know for an absolute fact, because I've been in situations like that before. I would do just about anything to take a child out of a dangerous situation. And this is one of those where if you want to go at it from a utilitarian angle, the elderly people have less time to live anyway, and there's a small child on the other side. And this also has the aspect of inaction that leads to a consequence versus direct action that leads to a consequence, and that's... I gotta pick the one on the left. This is harder than I thought it'd be. I thought this was gonna be fun. Oh, here's an interesting one. So, in this example, the self-driving car, there are actually people in the car this time. And so, in the scenario on the left, it would be 1 woman dead and 2 homeless people dead. And in the scenario on the right, the 3 people in the car, 1 male executive, 1 man, and 1 woman dead. So it's 3 people dead either way. And it's making part of the question here, is the life of a homeless person worth less than the life of an executive or a not homeless person? And no, in my opinion, no. Like, your occupation, your amount of wealth is not the defining factor of how much your life is worth in a philosophical sense, no. So that is irrelevant to me. But the self-driving car, does the self-driving car have an obligation more to its passengers than to pedestrians? Does it have, like, an imperative to protect the people within the vehicle more than people outside of the vehicle? And that's an interesting question. But I think in this case, this is less to do with the people and more to do with the car itself, but the car has an obligation to protect its cargo. That's what, the car is for. So I think in this scenario, I would, again, pick the option on the left. I've been picking the option on the left a lot. I'm gonna have to change it up, do something interesting. Okay, so in this example is, on the left, 2 male athletes and 2 regular men. And then on the right, the dead would be just 4 large men. So, is there a difference morally between large men and fit men? I'm assuming that this is talking about fat guys. So, is there a difference morally between fat guys and fit guys? I may have to show my bias here because, I'm a fat guy. I'm a real fat guy. I sort of hate this. I wish there were, more qualifying conditions and more options, because having to choose between 2 things that are equally horrible is hard. It's hard. And that's exactly how most of these are. Like, choosing between saving a cat and saving a little girl, that was fairly easy, but choosing between just 4 people and 4 different people, that's a hard decision. And none of these qualifiers that they're including are things that would actually make a difference to me. Like, homeless versus not homeless, fat versus not fat, that those are not things that matter when discussing the worth of a person. But I want to get through all of these, so I have to pick one, and I guess I have to go with this option. Okay, so here's another one. Oh my god, so many children! In the case the self-driving car with sudden brake failure will swerve and crash into a concrete barrier. This will result in 1 elderly woman, 3 women, and 1 elderly man dead. And the other option is 1 woman, 3 girls, and 1 man dead. God damn it, they have to ask questions about children, and I know that they do for it to be an effective simulator survey or whatever that you would call this. For it to be effective, you have to tackle the tough stuff, but whenever there's kids involved, my bias swerves immediately to do whatever thing causes the least harm to children, because I'm biased that way, and I think most humans are biased that way. But I just said 2 scenarios, or 2 or 3 scenarios ago, that the car has an obligation to protect the passengers of the car. And does the relative age of the pedestrians affect the car's mandate to protect its passengers? And I want to say no, and I want to say yes, because fucking kids! But then I would contradict what I said 2 scenarios ago. Oh, this is hard. I'm so uncomfortable. Alright, so I'm gonna frame this from this point forward. These are gonna be what I would choose, not what I think the car's programming should say. What I would choose if I had to choose in this scenario, I would rather the option where kids don't die. I'm probably a horrible person, but I would always prefer the option where kids don't die. But, and that's a sentence I just said. Anyway, next one. Okay, so the choice is 2 dead women or 2 dead pets. So, again, this is a little easier for me because I like animals, I really do, and I've had pets over the course of my life. I've had several dogs, I've probably had over a dozen cats at one point in time. I have a snake and a turtle now, and, you know, I love my pets. I love my pets a lot. But, to me, if I had to pick between saving a sentient, sapient organism versus a cat. Now, if we changed up the situation and that was my cat, or my dog, that might be a much harder decision to make, but I think I would probably always choose live people over live dogs. It's horrible! I mean, they're good questions, and these are the kind of questions you have to ask, especially if you want to program a self-driving car, but... Oh, no. Oh, no. Okay, so in this scenario, on the scenario on the right, 1 little girl will die, and in the scenario on the left, 2 homeless people, 1 pregnant woman, 1 cat, and 1 male doctor. Oh. Oh, it's not fair. I don't want the little girl to die, but there's a pregnant lady. The cat's irrelevant because, I'm sorry, animal lives, in my opinion, are not the same as human lives. Sentient, sapient life is different than non-sapient life. But I have to choose between a little girl and a pregnant woman, and in this case, it's sort of like, again, this is exactly like the trolley problem, where it's like, do you save 1 person or do you save 4 people and a cat? But that 1 person is a little girl? I can't not pick this, but, I can't not pick this, but... Because that's 5 people down there, if you consider the fetus a person. That's potentially 5 people right there. Versus 1 person. And even though that person is very small and shouldn't be in the driver's seat, even if this is a self-driving car. It's hard. It's a good mental exercise, but it's hard. Okay, so in this, we have more kids. God damn it, more kids. Hit me where it hurts. Why don't you? Okay, so one girl, one female executive, or one boy and one male executive. I think this also, the gender split, this doesn't make any difference. Your life isn't worth more or less if you're male or female or gender non-binary or anything like that. But okay, but this one has qualifications of traffic laws. So the girls, the females on the left, are violating traffic laws by crossing on a red signal. You don't deserve to die for crossing at the wrong time, but I'm thinking of if the company that manufactured the car were to get sued over this, they would probably bring up the fact that they were crossing at the wrong time. And even though from a moral, ethical stance, crossing at the wrong time doesn't mean you deserve to be executed. Oh. Moving on. Just moving on. This is hard. This is really hard. I keep saying that, but it's really hard. When you're in a situation where no matter what you do, someone is going to lose their life, do we consider things like gender, criminal background, mean income, you know, are these things that we ought to consider when talking about people's lives, like whether or not people deserve to live? I wouldn't ordinarily say so, but if you're in a situation where either way a person is going to die, in making that decision, do you consider those things? I mean, I balk at the notion, like, I reject violently and emotionally the notion that people could deserve to die based on things like that, but or deserve more to die than someone else based on things like that. But if you're in a situation where you have to make this kind of decision, do you consider those things? That's a really good and really, really hard question. Okay, so we have one criminal and one woman and one female executive. So this is basically saying, do you decide to run over the criminal because their life is objectively worth less than people who are not criminals? The other woman is innocent, like the person walking next to the criminal hasn't done anything wrong. So do we condemn her to death because we have decided that the criminal's life is worth less than somebody else's? Oh, I don't want to play anymore. I don't want to play anymore. Because, you know, it's one thing, it's very easy to make blanket statements in a vacuum. Like if I were to just sit here and say, this is what I think about people who have criminal background. It's easy to say that in a vacuum, but if you're put in a position like this, you're forced to think about your beliefs, why you think them, and whether or not they're applicable in situations like, does my want to place all humans on an even playing field apply in a situation like this where one has to choose? If you have to choose, does that mitigate things like that? And I want to say it doesn't, but when you get into reality and people have to make decisions like this, how do you qualify that decision? Do you look at people's background? Do you look at circumstances like this? I don't think I can play anymore. I know, I've been fussing and hemming and hawing, but these are difficult. I recommend, if you're interested in this type of thing, I recommend going through this yourself. I'll put a link to it in the description below, moralmachine.mit.edu, and it's interesting. It's really interesting. And also, another facet of this is you can create your own scenarios. You can incorporate things like traffic laws. You can incorporate different people in different conditions and stuff like that. And you can also go through scenarios that other people have put together. But thank you very much for watching. I'm sorry that most of this video was me going, ugh, and I might play this again in the future just to see if I can come across more diverse scenarios, or I might even do a video where I put together a scenario. But thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next one.